Hello everyone and welcome to a new video dedicated to our beloved Snoopy and the world of Peanuts. Today we analyze a Peanuts strip published on December 2nd, 1950, in which we find three characters, Charlie Brown, Patty, and Shermie. We're still in the early moments of the series, when the world created by Charles Schulz is just beginning to take shape. Yet already we find situations that anticipate the depth and irony that will characterize the Peanuts for decades to come. In this strip, Charlie Brown finds himself at the center of a confrontation with Patty and Shermie, who hurl a series of proverbs and maxims of folk wisdom at him. He, without saying a word, is literally bombarded by these catchphrases, becoming increasingly confused and perplexed. The result is a perfect representation of the sense of disorientation that often accompanies people when faced with the contradictions of life and social conventions. This kind of humor is one of Schulz's distinctive elements. It is not humor based on physical gags or exaggerated situations, but on a subtle reflection on the human condition, conveyed through children, who often express much deeper concepts than one would expect. Here we see Charlie Brown challenged not by an actual event, but by the simple incoherence of the statements made to him. The strip is very fast-paced. The characters speak one after another, without pause, almost as if it were a debate. Each vignette adds a piece to Charlie Brown's growing bewilderment, until the last scene in which he is left alone, visibly confused and not knowing what to think. But now let us see each vignette in detail to discover all the nuances of this little gem of humor and reflection. In the first vignette, we see Patty, Shermie, and Charlie Brown. Patty, with a determined expression and an energetic gesture with her hand, utters a famous proverb, "Think well before you act." It is a classic piece of advice, urging people to think before making any decision, avoiding impulsive choices. Interestingly, Schulz makes this scene visually dynamic. Patty is in motion, her body tilted slightly forward, as if she is emphasizing the importance of her statement. Charlie Brown, on the other hand, is in the center of the scene, motionless, with his usual neutral, almost passive expression. Shermie is to his right, observing the situation, ready to intervene. The setting is simple, as it always is in Peanuts, an empty background, three characters standing and a dialogue unfolding through their interaction. This graphic simplicity is one of the strengths of the series, because it focuses all the attention on the characters and their exchange of banter. This first vignette immediately sets the tone of the strip. Charlie Brown is the recipient of a life lesson, but his posture suggests that he has not even had time to process it. Schulz often uses this dynamic. Charlie Brown is the target of others' words and actions, almost always remaining silent and letting his expression communicate his thoughts. In the second vignette, Shermie takes the floor and directly contradicts Patty's proverb, saying, "He who hesitates is lost." This is a maxim that suggests exactly the opposite of the previous sentence. If in the first vignette Patty advised thinking before acting, now Shermie argues that those who stop too long to think are likely to fail. At the narrative level, Schulz uses a perfect mechanism. One strong statement is immediately countered by another, creating a situation of total inconsistency. Charlie Brown, in the middle, begins to show signs of confusion. If he follows Patty's advice and overthinks, he is in danger of being lost. But if he acts immediately without thinking, he may make a mistake. This is one of the first times in the Peanuts when Charlie Brown finds himself in a paradoxical situation, an element that will become a constant in the series. He is often a victim of the inconsistencies of the world, of the rules of society that seem to have no clear logic. An important visual detail is the way Charlie Brown begins to tilt his head slightly, a sign that indicates his growing disorientation. Schulz is a master of using characters' minimal expressions to convey strong emotions without the need for words. In the third vignette, the comparison continues with a further level of contradiction. Patty speaks again and says, "Absence makes the heart grow fonder," a saying that suggests how distance strengthens feelings and makes people appreciate loved ones more. But Shermie, without hesitation, immediately retorts with another proverb that goes in the opposite direction, "Out of sight, out of mind." Again, the two proverbs cancel each other out. If absence strengthens feelings, then it is good to stay away. But if, on the other hand, being away makes one forget, then it is not good. Once again, two popular proverbs cancel each other out. If Charlie Brown follows the first, he should believe that distance strengthens affection. If he follows the second, on the other hand, he should think that staying away leads to forgetting. His confusion grows. Schulz emphasizes his mental state with little lines near his head, as if he is desperately trying to find a logic in what he feels. But of course, there is no logic. In the last vignette, we see Charlie Brown completely alone. Shermie and Patty are gone, leaving him there brooding over what just happened. His expression is even more lost, with a hand on his cheek in puzzlement. The lines around his head reinforce the feeling of confusion. He has not said a single word for the entire strip, yet he is the character who expresses the most. This conclusion is a classic example of the silent punchline, a technique Schulz often uses in the Peanuts. There is no punchline, no overreaction, but the humor emerges precisely from the silence and absurdity of the situation. The reader laughs not because of an explicit gag, but because he identifies with Charlie Brown and his struggle to make sense of what he has just heard. Schulz often uses this technique in the Peanuts. The absence of a direct joke prompts the reader to reflect and empathize with the protagonist. How many times have we too found ourselves in situations where we no longer knew who to listen to? The genius of this vignette lies in making us smile at the absurdity of the situation, but at the same time, making us reflect on how often the world is full of contradictions. Trivia, anecdotes, and insights. This strip is a perfect example of how Schulz loved to play with language and the contradictions of folk wisdom. Proverbs are often considered universal truths, but when pitted against each other, they can prove inconsistent. This is a theme that will return often in the Peanuts, with Charlie Brown often struggling in the face of societal rules that seem to have no clear logic. Shermie and Patty are two of the most prominent characters in the very early strips, but over the years they will lose importance in favor of figures such as Linus, Lucy, and Schroeder. Shermie, in particular, is a character who initially seems to have a central role, but then is gradually relegated to an extra until she disappears altogether. This strip perfectly anticipates one of the recurring themes of the Peanuts, Charlie Brown as a symbol of those seeking answers in the chaos of the world. The contrast between proverbs is a theme that Schulz will take up again and again, always showing the more absurd side of folk wisdom. The way Schulz depicts indecision and doubt in Charlie Brown is an anticipation of his insecure and reflective character, which would become one of the fundamental elements of his personality. This December 2nd, 1950 strip is a small masterpiece of irony and reflection. Schulz demonstrates, once again, his ability to turn a seemingly trivial conversation into a perfect example of philosophical humor. Charlie Brown does not need to say anything. His lost look mirrors the confusion we all feel when faced with life's contradictions. And you, whose side are you on? Is it better to think before you act, or to act without hesitation?
If you enjoyed yourselves, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and activate the little bell to stay updated, and see you next, friends.